Test, test, talk test. Since I'm apparently swapping my volume and my voice, and I have to change it every time I switch to headphones. Test, test, talk test. I could still use a little more desktop audio. Swapping my volume. Turn that up a little bit. I have to change it every time I switch to headphones. Next test. 1, 2, 3. Morning coffee. I could still use a little more desktop audio. Turn that up a little bit. Next test. 1, 2, 3. Sounds good. Morning coffee. Let's get started. Snow tomorrow. And the morning, really. Quite a summer we're having. I don't care, we had a mild winter and I'm still at the phase of, gosh, I sure do love the snow. I just haven't shoveled enough yet. Philippians 4:12. Is that wrong? Nope, that ain't right. That's not what I'm looking for. Yeah, where's my message of the day? Wait, I bet it's in there. Nope. There it is. Etsy init motd. Or not. No. Alright, where is MOTD? User share. That's a tiny man page. That might be the smallest man page I've ever seen. Man. Man. let's see, PAMD login? This is what I'm looking for. Because it's not an SSH message of the day, it's a login message of the day. Ah, look at that. There's a link. I'd already been there before. Haha. Oh wait, is this where I was just now? Yep. That's no fun. Shoot. This isn't it. This is super weird. I always forget this. Wait a minute. No, I shoved the whole shell script into here. No, maybe it's an admin shell script. No, wait. Nope. Oh, crap. This isn't even that important. I remember there was a really weird file structure. There it is. Update MOTD. There. It was 90. There it is. 98. Bible verse. Okay, it's based on the CalSave. Forget Bible verse on the Sanders Web PHP. This is okay, I think. So when I get logged in, this comes up with a Bible verse. At least that's what it's supposed to do. And it's had some errors. So I'm troubleshooting it. You were making a rainbow? File type, no. Text width equals 0. Yeah. So let's split this, which is Control A. I beg your pardon. Oh, I'm not in Tmux. Okay, fine. Well, see, this is the exact problem. This is why Tmux is great. And it sucks to be outside of Tmux. So now what I have to do is drag my mouse cursor across this Lynx on, I'm mousing in normal mode, which means I have to go to visual mode. Yeah, there we go. Look at that. It's like I know what I'm doing. To a tail and a head. There we go. So Lynx is actually a web browser for your terminal. There's probably a newer one by this point. I'm just crappy about updating stuff when I don't really have to. It's like pain point thing. If it's not hurting, then it's not a problem. So I haven't had much of an issue with it, so I just kept using it. But Lynx is a browser and stuff. Let me get that saved. So here's an example. Lynx, google.com. Lynx is spelled Lynx. 503 service unavailable. Wow. Okay. I forgot about this. Google thinks I'm... that's an interesting point, actually. So this is a... I'm sorry. This says, Google, about this page. Our system have detected unusual traffic from your computer network. This page checks if you're really sending the request and not a robot. So some of the work that I do is actually automated web scraping and web interface that's automated for gathering information. It's funny. And the first octet of my IP address is 2600.
This is your morning.
Wow.
Centering.
Yeah, I remember that. It's been a while for that. Sorry. So Google will give you this page if you have unusual traffic, and my traffic is almost always unusual. So the interesting thing about this is, since I'm using this with Lynx, I can't read the CAPTCHA because there's no pictures here. And this is over SSH anyway, so SSH isn't going to transmit pictures. If I were on like Arch or something, I think there's a browser that supports that with Xterm, because Xterm has image support somehow magically. I don't understand. I literally can't even. But this will. This is just an indication that my my traffic is strange and that Google hates it. So the interesting thing about this, though, is that since this is a headless server, I can't read the CAPTCHA, right? So from this perspective, it seems like I'm not capable of checking the CAPTCHA and then typing it in and saying, yes, I'm a real person, because I don't have any GUI. I don't have any graphical user interface through this. But all that Google cares about is the IP address that this is coming from. So what you would wind up doing is setting up an SSH connection. And there's an SSH tunnel that you could do that would set up a dynamic IPv4 connection and would allow you to forward any ports randomly through your local, I forget what they call it. It's like a local SOCKS 5. It's a SOCKS 5 proxy forward for your browser, right? So when you go into your internet settings on your computer, you can set up SOCKS forwarding so that all network traffic gets forwarded through this one port. And then if you set up a dynamic port on the other side, all it does is when it goes through the tunnel, and the traffic on this local box will go through to hit my cloud server, and when the traffic comes out, it'll go wherever it needs to go because it's dynamic, and then it'll come back and it'll feed back right through this to this computer. And from Google's perspective, I will be browsing on a regular browser on this computer from that cloud server. So that's the way to do that. I frankly don't care enough to, because it's not important. But let's try something different. Yahoo.com. Sure. So check this. We've got Toys R Us. Oh gosh, that's terrible. Toys R Us founder dies days after announced shutdown. None refuses to back down in legal war with Katy Perry. What what the hell? And I can just hit right on this Toys R Us one because good God. And then we've got, here's the text of the thing. This is the web page right here. So, file photo, President George H. Bush left, listens to Toys R Us U.S. Chairman Charles Lazarus right, which we can't see because there's no images. Also no ads. It's ad-free browsing, ultimate. You know, I wonder. What happens when I go to Reddit? Yeah. I probably have to go to something that's legitimately, let's see. This Reddit are mechanical keyboards. I forget to say page down. Yeah. Mechanical keyboards. What keyboard do I buy? News. San Antonio, Texas meetup at Geekdom Event Center. Carbon SA bone. Yeah, the formatting's all screwed up, but I mean, it's still humorous. It's still all there, you know. And were it like a meta post or something, you could read it, or we're mostly text, because nowadays our mechanical keyboards is all just like pictures of stuff, not people working on things. But whatever. I'm not bitter. No. It's cool. Oh man, digressions for days. So that's what Lynx web browser is. And like I said, it's probably superseded by something else. Oh no, I'm thinking of the Emacs web browser. Never mind. But this would, this is like, it'll pull a page for you and it'll format the HTML. So you're not just looking at straight HTML. Lynx will actually display those things correctly, or moderately correctly. So when I take something like this and I go to --lynx --dump Sanders Web Bible verse PHP, I get this output, which is, let me clear that up. There we go. I get this output, which makes me want to snip out this bit right here. And I could probably do something that was, you know, very effective and like pattern matching, and looked for this and looked for that, and up, down, left, right, and to here and to there, and look for the dashes, and then, but I don't feel like it, because this was just kind of a bit of quick work. So I said tail n plus 6, which is, I believe, cutting the tail off the web page. I don't know, cuts off, n is plus 6, that's a negative. Yeah, there we go. So that's right. That's interesting. So this is cutting some off the top of the Bible verse. And now I'm just trying some other random Bible verses and seeing that the formatting looks good, and it does. That's kind of weird. I guess there's variety in the reference counts. What am I doing after that? I think I get head 29 or something. Where are you? Goodness. Yeah, so the head 29 is chopping off way too much. I wanted to get just the footnotes, or just one footnote. And that's chopping off everything because there's no footnotes. Yeah, that is interesting. So what we're going to do is, oh gosh, I always forget awk. This is an appropriate use of my time, I'm sure. Come on, awk. There we go. So I wonder if we need tail actually, if I do that. So there's that. And what I want to do, awk is a pattern matching tool, much like sed. And it works beautifully, but has syntax that I can never remember, because I always use it. And I always use it at odd times. And there's like curly braces and all kinds of nonsense. Print to this by column or wait a minute. It's not a split. Life wire? What the hell? Excuse me. Action. That's right. I need to be in sed. Awk does like tables and stuff. That's cool. Oh gosh, it's ed commands. No wonder I did this. Quick. Tell you what, tail +6. Oh gosh. Where was I editing stuff? 98. Yeah, let's stop there. Potato, tomato, all done. There we go. So now, when I log back in, well, that's even worse. All of this is going badly. No, yes. Yeah, that was the opposite of what I wanted to do. Well, not the opposite, not the full opposite. There. And now... I'm not gonna reconnect. No, it's only on SSH login. Yeah, it's fine. See, one of my favorite things about this trackball is the action is so smooth. And I just like go fling, and it goes. I can get my mouse all the way over with a flick without moving my hand. There we go. Now we've got everything, including the copyright and the references. You know what? It's all there. For the Lord God is a sun and shield, and the Lord bestows favor and honor. No good thing does he withhold from those who walk uprightly. Scripture quotations from ESV. So the right way to do this would probably be to use PERL. Don't hurt me. PERL is actually better at pattern matching this kind of stuff. As the engine's more efficient. The problem with PERL is my first language, and I do like PERL. But the problem with PERL is the things that I like about PERL. Because PERL, PERL is a bit, it's still filtering. PERL is just PERL. PERL is loose. PERL provides a very, very loose syntax, which means that you can kind of do whatever you feel like, and you're like, well, I think this is what the code should look like. And it usually works. And while when you start out, you're like, oh, syntax, this is annoying and getting in the way. I don't want to have to deal with syntax. And then you do. Hang on a minute. Test. Okay. Oh yeah, you're like, I don't want to have to deal with syntax because you make bugs. You're trying out stuff and you're like, oh well, that's the wrong syntax, and just the compiler's like, no, stop, it's time to stop. And you're like, I just keep getting beat up by this compiler. So you get a program that's a little bit more loose, and you get PERL, and you're like, okay, I can write this kind of however I feel like it. And it opens up to you, because you're like, yeah, sure, this is okay. PERL doesn't care. PERL never cares. As long as there's some structure there. So that's the strength of PERL. But the weakness is that since there's no structure, and since you're probably using it, this is an assumption, to start out, after you've started out, you're done starting out, you need to learn to be able to stay within a structure. Because if you don't, you start learning new stuff, and you develop a style, and then you develop a new style, and you adjust the style, and by the time you're like 6 months in, you go back to the first script you ever wrote, and you're like, what in the hell does that mean? This doesn't make any sense. I took great pride in making one-line scripts. One-line scripts. So it's like all of the functions just pipe and pass directly into each other in one interminable line of PERL. Utterly unreadable. Utterly unreadable. PERL had this great memory, I'm not even sure what you would call it, this great variable. It's called, it's $_. So the variable was $_. And PERL basically, I should probably look up some information on it now that I actually know what the hell I'm doing. But $_ was just like this catch-all variable for like the thing that PERL last processed or is processing. So you could be like $_ equals this, $_ equals that. For loop for $_ Within the for loop, $_ does this. pass it back to $_ You had no variables. It was insane. And that's what made it cool to, you know, 16-year-old me, like, I have no variables, isn't that cool, man? And then you go back to it and you're like, what the hell is this? I have no variables. What is this, man? I don't know. It was just kind of cool at the time to be like squishing everything down to as little as possible, but in reality it's not. That's not useful and it's not usable. It's like a fun thing to mess around with, but when you're programming professionally, it's like you need every bit of code. Every bit of code that you write is time invested. And if you invest time and energy into code that you write and you can never use it again, you've basically lost that time. It's basically useless. So developing a bit of code and then saying, that's cool, but how am I going to reuse this code later? And even if you just write it to be a little bit kind of an open function, and you can come back and copy paste it, or yank put it into newer code, that's fine too. But it's just that idea that you have where you're like, I'll just write something new. Yeah, you'll just write something new this time, and you'll write something new next time, and then when you have, like 72 files as a code base, and you're like, okay, well, I'll just fish through all of this, and like you have no structure, and you can't, and maybe you can, I don't know anyone who can, but there's a lot of complaints about programmers that are, or a lot of complaints by programmers, just like, what the hell was I thinking when I wrote this? This code makes no sense. Who wrote this? Oh, it was me. Because like you get into this flow state, and you're like, you're just, you know, it's like the movie Hackers. If I'm gonna date myself even more. You're moving stuff around, you're getting things going, you're running into problems, you're working around the problems, and you come back to it and you're like, what the hell is this? Why did I do this? And you start poking at it and you're like, this is a much better way of doing this, and it doesn't work, and you're like, huh, well, that doesn't work either. Why is it like this? Oh, that's why. And you've just like replicated this process of improvement that you already did and you didn't comment. That's why you see gigantic comments in my, let's see, that would be over here. It's your move. That would be, where is this one? It was on this page. It was a long form. There it is. So that's why you see this. And this is me writing paragraphs of notes to myself, so that when I come back here and I'm like, well, this is dumb, why didn't I do it this way? I'm like, no, dummy, stop. Here's why you didn't do it this way. Otherwise you just keep killing time, destroying time. Oh, it's bad. So PERL is good and PERL is cool, and you could probably I don't know. You could probably learn to use PERL correctly. PERL is unfortunately of little, in my opinion, I should say, and others, I guess, commercial skill or commercial use, because to understand some PERL is like, alright, I can kind of figure this out, but that can't be like your primary language, because if it's your primary language, the only jobs you get are, holy crap, what the hell did this guy just write? We need to hire a PERL guy who can look at it. And since that syntax is so loose, it's like you could get 100 PERL programmers to write the same bit of code and none of it would be the same. Which is cool in a way, but just not in a way that businesses like, or programmers like, to keep their brains inside their brain cases without just taking them out and then putting them on the table and then just beating them. Those are not the jobs you want, because you got to crawl inside someone else's head, a programmer's head, which I never recommend, because I've been in my own head. So I still think there's value in learning Perl just because to get an idea of it, and as kind of an introduction where there's a lot less structure. And it's free, of course, and you can just mess around with it. But I would recommend starting with Python if you can. I think there's much more value in Python. There's much more structure in Python. It's a better way to get started. Plus, it just works. Hashtag, you know, trademark, registered trademark. That song. Yeah, start on Python if possible. If you're still like, I'm not getting this is silly, then try Perl. There's layers upon layers of digressions. I think I'm waking up and talking to you. That's okay. Waking up isn't that bad. Plus, it's kind of required. Only kind of. I'm gonna have to ride this thought train backwards in order to get to where I used to be. So here, ride the thought train. Choo choo. So it's all good. It's crazy. All this programming garbage. Now where was this? Ah, that's where I was, yes. So, Perl would be a good pass-through for this. And Perl is an awesome way to handle things through pipes and just make little tiny scripts that do little tiny things, which is a lot of what Linux, Unix is based around. It's cool. Oh gosh, I gotta call John. Hey Cortana. Oh yeah, she doesn't like it when I stream. One of my favorite things about Cortana is that she accepts prosaic text input. So I can type something that makes sense to me linguistically without thinking about syntax as I espouse the benefits of syntax. You can type, hey Cortana, literally, hey Cortana, remind me to do X when Y happens, enter. And she'll parse that. Also the verbal stuff, when I'm not streaming obviously, works extremely well. And especially for someone like me who loses track of time very easily, which is why, you know, Pomodoros and other good stuff like that keep me on task. To be like, alright, start a timer for X minutes. And I know that I will be alerted and interrupted, which is important too. Interrupted in my work when the time runs out is important. Alright. But it's 6, and I gotta buckle down. I want to recreate the wheel. This is a little bit of a change here. I'm doing. Hello? Oh, these mice, these keyboards for days. Yeah, show it all. I don't think I did this. No. get a Linux box set up. A local one on a laptop. Problem is that they wind up being so hacky to get battery life to be okay. That's part of why I usually wind up using Ubuntu, because I just need something to run. I don't want a box that's a project. I have enough projects. And when I load up and it's like, oh, your wireless driver just got update, you know, doesn't work. And now you get to troubleshoot it for the next 5 hours. Like, that's cool when you're just messing around and you're trying to learn stuff. When you have work to do, not so much. I miss the full features of my Linux and Linux. Alright, kind of doing keyboarding stuff. Got a number at the top. So let's get organized. Bradley. That's number one. No, that increases the spread. Okay. What else you got? And take out the trash. Oh. No. Wait, yes. Hang on a minute. I've been doing this thing. You know how there's no Vim for old men? Wrong keyboard. Yeah. Do I have AutoHotkey installed on this? HABBO Hotel? Oh, I gotta open that. Oh man, what on earth? I mean, I guess it's just adware, the ad shortcuts that they added to this that was already on the PC, but like, fool's closed, man. AutoHotkey, if you're somehow not already aware, if you're already not yet presently aware, is a very cool, I want to say slick, it's not slick, pretty feature rich, what would you call it? Shortcutting tool, I guess? And it allows you to do a lot of things. Things that you can't do on standard keyboard firmwares, too, which is important to know. And... oh, bugger, I don't have it. Oh, there it is. Yes, I do have it. Yay. Edit with Vim. Yeah, I know your Molokai isn't there. I do have it. Look at that. So let's see if it works on this box. I tested this on a Windows 10 box. So let's see if it works. Where are you? Put a shortcut over here. Create a shortcut. Run that sucker. I got my hotkeys. So AutoHotkey allows you to do stuff, automatically hotkey stuff. You can build keystrokes and things. Basically, you write macros and scripts that are all keyboard functions. And it even has some light testing of the Windows environment, like wait for that window to open and things like that. So it works really well for workflow. So if you have a thing where you're like, gosh, I sure have to click on this, and then click on that, and then click on that, and then click on that, and then type, you know, donuts are great, enter, before I do my task, and I do that task 10 times a day, 20 times a day, or 100 times a day, you can automate all of it. All of it. Anything that is reproducible like that, or always has the same iterative process, when you're doing the same thing over and over again, AutoHotkey. And it does grid coordinate mouse clicks. So as long as the window is laid out the same way, you can be like, click here. That's the spot I want you to click. And you can even, and that's how it integrates with your keyboard is, if that's part of the function, you can make it so that a shortcut key triggers click here, or click here, wait, and then click there. So then, not only are you not leaving your keyboard, but you are expanding the expanding the powers of your keyboard to cover something that it wouldn't normally be able to cover. And most importantly, of course, you're staying on the keyboard, which just reduces the amount of time that you spend in mouse clicking. I don't know, I try not to get into ergonomics too much because I just go into rabbit holes, but clicking a mouse is like one of the worst things you can do. It's the exact same repetitive function. Usually people have their wrists, you know, cranked to one side at the time when they do it, and it's just this downward press, and they usually overclick, rather they click too hard. It's very, 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 very bad ergonomically. It's extremely bad. I'd recommend a vertical mouse like this. Not much as you can see. Goodness. It's a vertical mouse. And my favorite thing about this mouse is not even that it's vertical and really cool and awesome and all that, but the ergonomics, the little ergonomics that went into it. Because when you operate this mouse, you basically can't, it's hard to use your wrist in any real fashion, because when you rotate your wrist at this angle, you make a little arc. So you kind of have to move your elbow. So now all of my mouse movement has transitioned into, and you can do a little bit of minute mouse movement with your wrist or with your fingers, but for the most part, it eliminates this entire, like, here's my wrist moving stuff around. It's almost all elbow, which is great. It takes some getting used to, though, because you developed all this fine motor skill in your wrist and your fingers and everything, and now you're eliminating all of that by saying, well, my wrist is going to be straight, and my fingers can't really move the mouse around that much, because it just wiggles back and forth. So you turn it into your elbow movement. So that is one of my favorite things. The other favorite thing is this mouse click action is so intensely light. It's so incredibly light. And you never notice how hard you're pressing the mouse button until you actually get a light mouse button. And I've had other ergonomic mice, even this one, even this trackball, which is very ergonomic. The click is not anywhere near as easy as this click. And one of my favorite things about this mouse. It's just not something you notice until it's gone, or until you actually find a good one. That said, I really do enjoy the trackball. I enjoy not having to move at all. I enjoy the flick, where I can just flick the ball and then the mouse goes all the way across the screen. Digressions for days, man. I never know how you all listen to me. So, right, that's what I was saying, because using a mouse is bad, almost categorically. Clicking the mouse is bad. And even if you're FPSing, like, you don't wind up clicking that much as compared to the amount of movement that you make. But spreadsheeting and stuff like that, where you're just like, click here, click there, click right, click drag, click copy, click paste, click whatever, it's terrible. It's bad, man. It's no good. So any time that you can automate something that can be reproduced using AutoHotkey, by all means, by all means, by all means. And the cool thing about a programmable keyboard is, and you'll find this if you try to use just AutoHotkey and be like, well, I can just use scripts on AutoHotkey, no problem. You'll run into, what is it, shortcut collisions, like, you want to be like Control-Shift-A. That's not taken, right? And then you will find some context where Control-Shift-A is taken, is absorbed, and is picked up by the program rather than AutoHotkey. So you get into this situation where you run out of shortcuts, because you want to keep adding features. And the more you use it, the better, obviously. So you try to use it more, and then you're like, well, I need new shortcuts. Well, I need more shortcuts. And then eventually you're like, Control-Shift-Alt-Windows-Key A to find an unoccupied keystroke that's not used. That's actually the concept of the hyper key, which you can kind of implement in AutoHotkey, strangely enough. Because it supports states and like variables that you can flip and then operate with and then flop back. But the hyperkey is basically all your modifiers held down, and that is kind of a trick to ensure that no matter what OS or no matter what the OS thinks or what program you're in, they don't have any shortcuts that are going to collide with Control-Alt-Shift-GUI. But then you're doing this finger yoga to hold all those keys down, and you're hurting yourself in other ways. So that's the concept of the hyperkey. The hyperkey would be one key that you press that is the hyperkey, which holds down all the mods. And then once you're holding down all the mods, it's, you know, with one pinky, then you can use, you have full access. So it's an interesting idea. And that's something a programmable keyboard would definitely give you. It'll expand your ability to use shortcuts and expand your ability to use the keyboard ergonomically and stay the heck away from these mice. So, several digressions ago I was talking about this. The reason I was even talking about AutoHotkey and then got to mice and one of these mice was that I made a little AutoHotkey script to take what I'm editing and pop it out into a Vim console. So if I'm here and I do, if I'm on the right keyboard, I do this on a different keyboard, and the layout's different there too, which means it's Control GUI, which would be this. Oh, it doesn't like the... Anyways, yeah, it's not made for this particular box because Vim is in a different spot. But it basically takes what I've highlighted, opens Vim, pastes it into Vim, and then lets me work on it in Vim. And then when I'm done, I hit Control GUI V, and it copies what I have, closes the Vim, and then pastes in all my edited text. So functionally, it's the exact same as copying, opening Vim, and then enter, pasting into Vim, editing your text, and then copying it out. So I use this for responding inline because that's like the right way to respond. And I've been so bloody busy that I haven't been able to work on this guy's keyboard. And I feel bad. It feels bad, man. So kind of hard to do one-handed. Yep. Two plates. It's very doable. Space.
Say no.
Do I not have Unicode on this box? Which I don't even have.
Don't say no. Don't say no.
Input.
Don't say no.
How is this not UTF-8?
Don't say no.
Oh, look at that. It's a 3/4, but it's like this big, so I can't even tell. It looks like a glitch. Alright. Based on Signum 2. Extension of those keys. Would be G match. Is it R? How is that not F2? Oh, this is old. What happens when you don't update your key map on all your keyboards. Music is a appropriate for how long it takes to start this up when I'm streaming. There it is. How is that the most recently updated one? Is bargains? Good. Let's get another one. I feel like I have this wrong. Six. Yeah, it's not there. And then this was also dollar on semicolon, I believe. Yeah. So it would be that, and that would be dollar as well. With a shift, and with a shift, and with a save, and with a build. This was actually one of the other advantages I hadn't mentioned about. I don't know what this is, but we'll try it out.
PRR, Public Radio. PRR.
I shouldn't pick random things. I've been here before, I'm pretty sure. Yes, YouTube is now available on Trying to Make Money Edition. Because apparently you have to get people to send money to support the product instead of the product just subsisting on its own money that it gets from Google. Right. So, the other cool thing about blah. Teensies. If you get a Teensy, then you have this absolutely wonderful see, it doesn't pick up my shortcut. I don't know why it doesn't do that. That makes me sad. Where are you, Teensy? This wonderful Teensy loader. And the Teensy loader is fantastic. There's so much garbage that you don't have to deal with if you have a Teensy loader. And the Teensy loader is just this software, this fancy, simple little tool that lets you flash your Teensies. Flash your Teensies with the press of a button. So you set your boot key on your keyboard. You load up which hex file you want. So in this case, I'm going to flash the Signum. You can even hit auto, but I try not to. And then on my keyboard, I go hit the boot button. Teensy loader's erasing, loading, and rebooting. And now, I've got my updated key map location, and I can do money dollar bills for days from a better key position. Part of the reason why I choose not to do auto is because I will sometimes brick these because I have so many keyboards that if I set it to auto for one and then switch to another, I'll flash it with the wrong hex file, and then I'm like, ew. It's really just my fault for not standardizing a hand wire, but whatever. So this guy, the flank, is not plugged into this computer, it's plugged into this one. So I'm going to switch it. That's a nice remix. Just looking right here, everything else looks like it matches up. That's not. Ooh, that's not there. That should be there. It's one of my mnemonics. Asterisk with an I. I don't know why some of this stuff works for me, but it does. That's the flank, and come back. I didn't mean what I said. Make sure we're loading the right one. I think I'm already set. Yep. Looks good. This layer 2 has been problematic. Not really problematic, more like I just keep messing with it. That's for spreadsheets. I don't need that. I'm not that kind of business analyst anymore. Spreadsheets. That's why I was learning all this AutoHotkey and this keyboard shortcut stuff. It just lets you work faster. I am very, very lazy. Very lazy. And I get very, very bored with dumb things. I don't like doing them. So, if you want, there's a quote that's attributed to Bill Gates that goes, if you have a difficult job, give it to a lazy person and they'll figure out the easiest and fastest way to do it. And that's me. And I'll actually spend more time trying to figure out a way to do it so it's not boring than I will just actually doing it. So that's a pro and a con of me. It's not always the right way to handle that. But I will sure try. So, let's switch this back to the flank. And if you don't use auto, it's not going to make much of a difference. It's already loaded. It would be boot key, flashing, programming, rebooting. Ta-da! That's it. So, and if you do that with a ProMicro, you're like, well, what OS am I on? And how can I interface with USB? And is this Windows 10 or this Windows 7? Do I need a boot HID loader, or am I using the QMK software? What is supported? What isn't supported? The Teensy is just the Teensy. Like, you get the Teensy loader and you're done. That's it. I really like that. I really like that. It's worth the extra $8. I get down on it for being $16, but it's worth the extra $8 to get that Teensy bootloader. Right. So, yeah, that was in order to fix the flank, and the flank is happy now. So I'll put it back on the other computer. Pass. So now, carrot. That's what that was all about. I wasn't sure where my carrot was. Don't hate me. So, pattern match, beginning of line, plus word character. Yep. And then, when you do that, do a normal mode map of capital I, caret, space, enter. Got it. I'm gonna have to do a video on Vim. It's too good. It's too good. Let's eliminate some of the pleasantries here. There you go. So, based on Signum 2, see attached. Add a number row. That's number wang. 0. got that. Have a long key, the shift in place of escape shift. Is now have a long key for shift in place of escape. Shift is now vice versa on the right side. Number row. Add two unit tall keys to that side. Columns. Board wider so there's more space in the middle. 3 finger widths between T and H. T and H? Space between the halves. Add 2 3/4 length keys in the middle. Truly Ergonomic had this and it was brilliant. I never got middle keys. Maybe my pointers are too short. But the middle keys always made me get off the home row, which slowed everything down. I don't have a problem with them if they're like enter keys or backspace keys, keys that you normally wind up breaking your flow to hit. I'm never a fan of breaking your flow, but like something about the enter key to be able to be like da 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 bam, like that's satisfying, and that has value, I think. Emotional value, if nothing else. Like it feels cool, feels good. That does count, by the way. Keys, low profile, OBS. Really on the fence about palm rests. I noticed some of your keyboards have them. What is your thinking there? Is it purely for portability? I use a Maltron and I'm very used to palm rests. I've noticed the keyboard.io has gone with rests. Keyboard.io? Are we thinking of the same thing? What am I thinking of? Oh yeah! Yeah. And he also has like a palm button, I think, if I recall correctly. Yeah. Heirloom grade. That's some fancy marketing there. Look at those straight wrists. Look at that. Good stuff. Good stuff. So the deal with palm rests. And this is for you, I guess, as much as anyone else. The deal with palm rests is they're okay to use so long as they are used to keep your wrists straight. I actually have some here that I cut up and split up for my original ghetto docs. And from time to time I'll use them on here because I'll find myself if the standing desk and my standing desk upstairs is not quite the right height. You all can see this, right? Yeah. So I'll get into a situation where it's not quite there and my wrists, this is my wrist straight. My wrists will do this. And this means I'm building a kink in here. I'm forcing them at an angle. And when I do that, that damages things. It also breaks your alignment, so your reach is different. So in that case, a wrist rest is preventing, it's like a block that's preventing my wrist from dropping down too much. So then I wind up I'll work like this, or I'll work like this in order to, so that when I feel that wrist rest, I know, oh, I gotta get back up. Because technically hover typing is the right way to do it, although if you had, you know, exactly the right height, which it might be about there, like then you can do that, as long as those wrists are straight. What you don't want the wrist rest to be is something that, you want the wrist rest to be something that promotes straight wrists. And people misuse and use them out of context. That's not out of context. They use them in incorrect ways, and it's damaging. And some people use them for the feels, like it looks cool. Great, whatever. I resisted hover typing for a long time because I could just never get it. But I finally came around. The standing desk helped. The wrist rest, if used properly, can promote a hover typing, because hover typing allows you to keep everything as straight as possible. Everything's coming, your fingers are coming down, straight down. The tunnels in your metacarpal tunnels are straight, which is always the objective. So wrist rests can be pretty. They can contribute to the overall aesthetic of your keyboard, but just make sure they're not actively hurting you. That's where the profile of the keyboard comes in. People want things to be light. They want people to be thin. They want people to be thin too. They want keyboards to be thin, and the thinner the keyboard is, the closer it gets to the table, and the easier it is for you to hover type or to keep your wrist straighter. Because you can't, like, I've got my Plico upstairs, and the Plico has a USB hub built into it, and that makes it tall. Because you can't, I wanted to fit all of it into the same 40% package. So it winds up being very tall, and it makes a lot of sense to hover type on that, because if you don't, you're like, let me just like pretend to do that, and it hurts. But I'm a lot further along than a lot of people, I guess. I don't know. So wrists straight. It's always the goal. So now that I've said all of that, let's escape. Oh hell, I'm in X mode. Dun dun dun. X mode. In VI, there's a legacy mode called X mode, and if you get into it, it's very confusing how to get out of it. So when you get into it, it has a little message that says, "Hey, just so you know how to get out of this, type visual." It's fine. Sole objective of the palm rest is to promote straight wrists. This means if you hover type, you need no wrist rest. I don't have a philosophical aversion to wrist rests, just a practical one. As it's one more piece to move around. And not everyone is as mobile as one me. Either way, a wrist rest which fails to straighten your wrists is a useless one in my book. This means any wrist rest which is at the same height as the keyboard frame, keyboard to the plate, is useless except to add another wrist rest on top of it. To get it to proper height. See? 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 So, this is square, right? So when I get to it, the closer I am to it, especially in a standing desk situation, the more everything has to be kinked. So the further you get from it, you can make up a lot of that in your elbows. So now my wrists are straight. The closer my body gets to it, the more I have to keep my wrists straight and move my arms out of line. So just in typing that small bit of text, prose, I already feel it. I've got JJ40s and I've been building the org board to be a JJ40. I don't know. It's like I can't deal. I can't deal. I know other people can. It's an ergonomic baby step. It's not a baby step, it's a big step, but it's not perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and take my Signum, swap it over. Sorry, lights. Man, Windows 7. Come on, you can do it. I just plugged in a keyboard. Windows 7 is very slowly adding this keyboard to its repertoire, supporting it as a USB device. It's actually probably like trying to figure out what Signum is and how to get drivers for it. ATS switches, no problem. I don't think the angles of keys need to change because I have wide shoulders. I think all the sides will be on point. Great. Really do like this angle. And it's the same as the Microsoft Natural angle. What is the Microsoft Natural angle? Unless, of course, do acknowledge that this keyboard exists, sir. Man, this Windows 7 box hates this keyboard. It hates these cans. Stay away from the cans. What do you think? Not much work. Not much work. Tab length keys running vertical in the positions we talk about would do, but I'm keen to do that anyway. We agreed to have spread the board a bit, 2 tab length, rather than 3 finger widths. I can make the spread 2 tab. Probably work better. What do you think? Trying to keep as much in line with the current design so we don't reinvent the wheel. What you have really seems to work. Trying to keep as much in line with the current design so we really don't have to reinvent the wheel, which helps it really seems to work well. Seems to work really well. Once we're here in the design, it may make up 2 boards for me if that isn't too much. Yes, not a problem. Man. Vertical tab keys. I think that works. I think DCS with no profile. Row 0? Row 1? Put that right there. That'll work, I think. Cut these plates, build them up. Like it. It's a cool idea. Only place I'd go further would be adding another key. I'm kind of going back and forth on that, which means I should try it instead of going back and forth. This dude's in Australia. Looks like I'm going to laser cut it today or tomorrow. some of that Windows 7 box, but whatever. Google has keyboard shortcuts, which are, by the way, Vim key shortcuts, for the most part. Alright, that's it for now. I have to pick that up later. I guess I can check if we've got chats. Although I don't think so. Ah! Goodness. I'm sorry. Gentlemen. Tobias. Hey, how are you? Are you aware of the DACTYL keyboard? Are you aware of the DACTYL keyboard encourage of your videos? Not sure I know what that means, but I know the DACTYL keyboard. It's like an ergonomic match for like the Maltron. I haven't tried one. I should honestly like get one commissioned and put it together just to try it out, because ergonomically you want to reduce travel as much as possible, and the only way you can really reduce travel on something that's already very minimized is to take the keys and push them closer to your fingers. So the DACTYL takes that and like sinks it down in the middle, so it becomes a cup, which meets your fingers better because your fingers move like this. They don't move like this. They don't move flat. They move like this. So anytime you're matching that movement, having that keyboard that is easier to see just makes it shorter travel. And anytime you can get shorter travel is better. Further, and this is kind of a point that people don't often consider, is that these key tops are essentially like the base is wide and it comes up at the top. So the top of the key is where you're making your contact. Technically, this is a waste of space. So if you take this key top and that key top, this key top has a space between it before the next key top starts. And that space just means more reach. That's all it means. It means more travel for you. And by taking the keyboard and cupping it, you take those flats that you're actually contacting and push them closer together. So you're reducing travel overall. It's better all around. My problem is I'm not keen on splits, although this iris has kind of opened me back up to it. I really like this iris. But I think it's definitely worth it. I think it's definitely worth it. And like I said, I should actually probably make a note and get one of those shape waised up to build. Make sure you can hear me with this music going. Let's see. I think it's definitely worth it. Okay, cool. So that's Tobias. That's on the DACTYL. Are your keyboards flat, or do you have an angle built into the layout? I've been using the Let's Split ergonomic stress I get from the trackball mouse mostly. I can definitely tell the chair height is wrong. I can't stand for long periods of time. Standing desk doesn't work for me. Good morning, Apostle. Jonas, my keyboards are flat. I keep them flat on the desk. However, they are angled so that they match your hands as closely as possible. The thing to keep in mind about all the ergonomics is always, and I'm not sure how long you all were listening, but keep the wrists straight. As long as the wrists are straight, things are going to be better. You don't want to be making a lot of strength motions. You don't want to be flexing these tendons in here for your hands while you're out of alignment, while you're kinked. Any of this stuff. It's all bad. I just hear the wrist pop when I do that. So, a good measure, if you really are concerned about it, is to get a, and I don't have my wrist brace here, but get a wrist brace that's a good locking wrist brace, and then just tighten that sucker down so that your wrist is immobilized, and then go, alright, now I'm going to try to use my keyboard. And if you can't use your keyboard, well, you got a problem. And that's one of the advantages of, because if I put on a wrist brace, I can't use my keyboard. I can't use these keys on the outer keys on my keyboard, on my Signum. But that's only because it's not tented. So if I get an iris and I put a little block underneath it and I get it tented, well, now I can use it because everything's in alignment. This is called forearm pronation. Bending down is pronation. Back is renation, rebate nation. I'm not sure, but this is forearm pronation. And you'll find that when you sit comfortably, you don't sit comfortably like, here's how I sit normally. You sit, with your hands in your lap. Your wrists are usually kind of up a little. Your thumbs are up in the air. That's what's comfortable. And you can do that just sitting down normally, and put your hands on your lap and just see where your hands fall and what kind of angle your wrists are at. And some people really work better, like they're comfortable at a 90-degree angle, and they'll buy keyboards that are completely stand up. And if that's where they're comfortable, that's where they're comfortable. But the goal is just to work with your wrists, your ergonomics as much as possible. Now, as far as desk height goes, I would recommend the optimal desk height is just a little bit above your elbow. So bringing that elbow down, you should just barely graze it. And it can be even a little bit higher than that in order to get your keyboard there. And you can make up some minor differences by putting your feet together or spreading your legs. You wind up kind of dancing around. It kind of depends. I really didn't think I'd be able to stand for long periods of time, but one thing that makes a big difference is your shoes, your footwear. There are also standing desk pads that make a big difference. If you're standing on concrete, I mean, I don't know if you ever worked retail or something like that, but you stand on concrete with low pile carpet, it doesn't matter what you got. You need to have, I mean, it kills your feet. It just kills them. Now I'm a big dude too, so there's a lot of weight on those feet. So a standing desk, in my opinion, should be used in conjunction with a high-quality shoes. Good shoes, or even super comfortable shoes. It's like sandals made out of that yoga mat material. Something that's really, really cushiony. Even to the point where it's just your feet really sink into it. There's a lot of working mats on the market where people are working in industrial places, and they're standing on concrete all day, and they get these thick mats that are very, very, very comfortable. So this is your industrial area that you're working at. You're being industrious here. So getting a good foot mat, good footwear, it's all really good. There's a saying I heard recently that I really like, is you can either try to carpet the whole world, or you can put on some sandals. So put on some carpeted sandals. It's your contact point. It's not necessary that everything be perfect. It's just where the rubber meets the road, where your foot meets the ground. So that's The DACTYL, yeah, the standing desk, chair height. So chair height is basically the same thing. Your objective is to get so that your arms are resting at the same spot. And there's a live stream from a couple days ago. I believe it's posted. I do talk about chairs, and it's a long live stream. It's 2 hours, I think, but it is linked, and it does have the timestamps on it, so you can go through it, go to the description, and it'll say talking about chairs or expensive chairs. And just click that, and it'll get you right to the chair talk that matches up exactly how you're supposed to be in a chair and how you're supposed to have your back set up correctly while you're in that chair. My problem with a chair, and my problem with a lot of things, is I'm pretty broad-shouldered, so my resting state is like my shoulders are back here, my arms are here. I'm kind of far from the keyboard, really. So with my shoulders at complete rest, this is my range. This is what I get. So with this range, I have the option of doing a split keyboard here and then here, which I can move that over here. That would be my split keyboard option. But what I've been doing is I also get this within my range, and that's where my signum comes in. So doing this means my shoulders are still at rest, and I'm not doing one of these. I'm not reaching forward, I'm not hunching, and I'm not killing my neck doing that in the process. So you can do this position. It's a little bit harder because you wind up getting closer to the desk, and closer to the desk means you kind of lose your arm, your chair arms, because some of the chair arms come pretty forward. So, I mean, you kind of want the chair arms to be there because you get sick of hover typing and you're like, I just need a break. Forward. I'm not hunching, and I'm not killing my neck doing that in the process. Wow. So you can I just discovered a keystroke for muting and unmuting. It's a little whatever that was. But where was I? That's right. It's kind of nice to have the armrests there because you're going to want to take a break every once in a while, and you can just kind of rest your arms there and then go back into it. But you wind up getting closer and closer to the desk, and those armrests will be bumping and bumping in. And just take just once you get the height figured out and you've got enough for your arms to rest on, just take a skill saw or something and just chop them off. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's kind of nice to have, but you want to be close enough, because if you've got those arms there and you're an extra 6 inches away, then this lovely ergonomic position turns into this, and then you're just wearing yourself out throughout the day. So just focus on being as straight as possible, keeping those shoulders back, and figuring out what your comfortable position is. Where are you comfortable? Where are you rested? Where do your bones and your joints settle? And once you figure out where they settle, go from there. Build around that. Never try to conform yourself to your situation. Always try to conform the situation to yourself. But yeah, definitely try the standing desk with different shoes and mats and stuff like that. I highly recommend it. Do any of you make standalone mini keyboards that would be used for a specific program? The interesting thing about standalone mini keyboards is you can get like any of these, and someone made a nice little vertical keyboard out of one of these, out of a proper plank. But like any of the JJ40 designs, you can program any of these to be anything you want. So again, for ease of programming, I recommend going with a Teensy. Just because you get that sweet, easy AVR. But I mean, a keyboard's just an input device. I mean, you can turn it into a keypad if you want. You can turn it into a set of numbers. You know, it's your number pad. It doesn't matter. You can reprogram all the keys to do whatever you want. And at least on Cherry switches, you can take your keycap off, rotate the board, and put it right back on. Easy AVR will give you a very easy way to lay that out. QMK is a little bit more, like if you're a programmer, you can run it, it's fine. But technically any of these keyboards, even if you want to buy one Iris half, you can do that and turn that into a little single pad, a pad keyboard. I mean, it's all just input. That's the thing to keep in mind, is this isn't a separate device. This is just a thing that's sending input to the computer, and you can tweak it and modify it and program it and customize it however you want. My recommendation, though, for anything that is one-handed is to make sure that it has a really good base, because when it's one-handed, it necessarily has less of a footprint, and that means less contact with the desk surface. And there's one thing that will make you less sure of your typing fastest, and that is for your keyboard to slide around. While you're typing, it moves, it shifts, and I can actually play back the live stream when I was running these irises, and I caught myself. I would be writing, and then I'd shift it. I'd writing, and then I'd grab the body and turn it. I'd writing, and then I'd move it over a little bit. Shelf matting, I can't drive this home enough. I find it very, very useful. Shelf matting is just this this kind of friction pad that's kind of padded a little bit. It makes it really easy to set it just about anywhere and get enough friction. Plus, when you use something like this, it creates no pressure points. So this means I can take this and put it right on my laptop keyboard, and I can still type on it without kicking off any keys on the laptop keyboard, because all the weight is distributed along the bottom. If you put feet on this, which most keyboards do, you drop it right on there and you're pressing, you know, Control 1 and Control Plus or something like that. So basically any programmable keyboard on the market will be able to handle what you're looking for in a keypad, rather in a, I guess I forget what you called it, for a mini keyboard. And the knob via USB input I haven't figured out yet. There are a number of Bluetooth knobs that can do lots of different things. For CAD though, there's this, it's like a 3D mouse. I'm sure you're aware of what it is. It's like this thing that you rotate around, and you can kind of tilt it to move around, but you can also lift it up, and it works in the three-dimensional space very, very well. I don't do a lot of CAD work, so I can't speak too much to it, but I know that getting good access to shortcut keys and being able to shift your mouse back and forth is important to get, you know, the angles. You know, now I want to pan, now I want to raise, now I want to rotate, you know, sideways. If you have like a control click to do that, what I'd recommend is using a tool like Xmouse. Xmouse actually has, I'm not sure if I have it installed on this computer. Yep, I do. So Xmouse has, double click that. Let me hashtag no filter this guy so you can see what I'm talking about. Xmouse is a mouse expansion kind of tool. It makes it so that you can do more things with your mouse, and it actually has layers that it supports. So you can specify individual actions or specify different keys for different programs. So if you have, like in this instance, if I'm in OneNote, when I'm in OneNote, I use mouse wheel tilt to pan left and right rather than go forward and back. But in every other program, it doesn't do that. So when I do things like hold down this key, my scroll wheel becomes a zoom. And I do this in, like I work in Inkscape and in Adobe Illustrator, and both of those have different panning systems. Like in Illustrator, I think you hold down space and then hold down mouse click, and then you can drag around comfortably. But in Inkscape, I think you have to hold down Alt to drag. And then, no, in Inkscape you hold down space alone, and it just grabs the page, and then you just move the mouse. So what I've done is I've made a pan button, which I do mouse 3 click or mouse wheel click. And in this program, I adjust it so that that mouse button does the thing. And then in the other program, I adjust it so that same mouse button does the thing. So it's different in this program and it's different in that program. and it's always the same to me because I just click that mouse 3 button. So there's lots and lots of options here. You can specify simulated keys, and you know, in Chrome this will flip tabs. I hold down, yeah, see, it actually shows you, it highlights. So when I switch layers, and you get 2 layers here, I hold down the mouse button, hold down this button, and then scroll, and then it activates different things. I do the same with the task view, which is very useful, but it's a great way to unify your mouse across different programs and even different systems. Just be careful about the different kind of mice. I don't know why they do this, but this mouse, for example, and I have a couple other mice, the mouse wheel click or the mouse wheel tilt is not a tilt scroll, it's a tilt back. So when I hit tilt the mouse wheel left on one mouse, it does a browser back. When I tilt the mouse wheel left on another mouse, like this mouse for example, it actually scrolls left. So I don't know what the design decision is there, and it kind of sucks because your input device, like, you can't say, if I have this mouse, then this. If I have this mouse, then that. Although that might be I might be kind of an edge case, just because, you know, I have mice for days, input devices for days. Right, so I hope that's helpful. And audio's good. Standalone Mini-Keyboards, cool. Apostle says, you can write off your comfy work shoes on your taxes. Yes, you sure can. Having a sole proprietorship, I don't know, a lot of my stuff just takes out of my profit, which I try to keep as low as possible so it's not taxed as crazily as possible. But honestly, I'm getting pretty comfortable. I'm getting to a comfortable place. The standing desk was the last really big purchase, and everything else is pretty lightweight. I might wind up spending a little bit of dosh on individual, what is it, on a better computer to hopefully stream a bit better for you all. But I don't know. Honestly, if everything was super clear and you could read everything perfectly, there would actually be implying implications to what you all saw on the screen, because it's all sensitive data, and I do apologize that you all can't read exactly what I'm doing, but it's either that or you know, it's private data. And then the poor connection, and you know, I don't like the skips, but the poor connection kind of, you know, JPEG compresses a lot of the images, so it makes it, even if I screw up, it would be kind of difficult to read. And yeah, keyboards, anything, all my keyboard parts and stuff, that's all getting written off and comes straight out of the sole proprietorship, the income there. And I don't have things split into the bank account yet, or separate bank accounts yet, but that'll probably be coming soon. What I wanted to say, I'm encouraged by your videos to build a DACTYL. Yes, English is not my, yeah, no worries, Tobias. Yeah, definitely build a DACTYL. I'm on that boat too. I should build one. It's just a long process. You know, I could probably get one on Shapeways. I think I remember seeing one for like 60 or 80 bucks or something, just to get the body built. And then obviously you're going to be hand wiring that sucker yourself, but that just means I can easy AVR it and up. No, with the split, it's not a hardware split, although I could make it a hardware split. Where is my hardware split? Oh, if you all knew me from the old days, this is actually my first custom keyboard. It was called the Ghetto Docs, but I hacked it a steel plate from a Dell AT101, cut it with a bunch of hand tools, and just used the plate as a house for the switches, and then used a bunch of this chipboard stacked up, and that's a safety pin there, or a closed pin as a standoff, and I did a lot of hot glue. And this was my first split keyboard, my first custom keyboard. Technically, it was my first split, just because it was the first one I made. But this is the hardware split. The hardware split means that every single wire that is processed in here, and this is actually me improving the case over time. And these long screws are standoffs to make it so that it sits up a little bit. But the hardware split doesn't use like an I2C or I2C, so every wire that comes off of this board comes across in a separate ribbon cable wire to this side, and that way you can use firmwares that don't support I2C, which Easy AVR does not, at least last I checked. It would be nice if it did. So you don't get the standard TRRS connector, which is just very light and simple and easy. So that's an easy way to do a split. This is kind of the hard way. It doesn't look nice, but you get more features out of it since you've got Easy AVR. It's easier to work with. And then obviously it's not disconnectable unless you make a connector for it. I spent a long time trying to figure out a good way to do a hardware split. There just really isn't one. Closest I got was this, which was very expensive. This is a USB Type-C cable to breakout boards, and those breakout boards were like, I think they were like $12 a pop or something. It was ridiculous. But I spent like 4 hours mapping out all the connections, because that cable is a very complicated cable, and since it's reversible, your inversion of it changes the contact points. So I would map out all the connections and say this is connected to that, and this is connected to that, and do that, and then I would take one half of the cable and then flip it over and plug it back in, and then they would change. And I would say this is connected to that, and now that is connected to this. And I'd take the other half of the cable, alright, I'd flip this one back, take the other half, flip it back. Or I flipped and then flipped. So I had like 3 or 4 different matrices of connections, and then I cross-referenced them and figured out which ones would always be connected and which ones weren't connected and which ones were never connected, and trying to figure out how many connections I can get to go across this. But there's actually other considerations. I think if you ground the cable properly and don't use the ground as an I/O, if you ground the cable properly, then you don't get crosstalk. But a lot of those wires are kind of crosstalky, just because of the way they're twisted. Like, that's the way it's set up. It's made to do that. It's not made to handle, pulses going back and forth in opposite directions, and it just. I shouldn't say that. I never really fully tested it, but it was just, I saw problems in it, which was just a shame, because it was a cool build and I liked it. But at this point in keyboard firmwares and in software support and in hardware support, I think we're in a good place. I mean, I really wish we could get the Easy AVR type control of it. And keyboardfirmware.com has a very cool, easy to program QMK firmware builder, but you don't get the extended functions, and you're still flashing it in a difficult way. With the Teensy, you just, I showed you the Teensy is a very simple program that works cross-platform, but there's just little hurdles, and the little hurdles add up. And when those little hurdles add up to enough, I gotta go soon. When the little hurdles add up enough, you don't take the steps. Like, you're like, well, I'll hit it later. I'll do it some other time. And you never do it. So making that barrier to entry as low as possible. And that is Easy AVR, where you're like, oh, I didn't open it. It didn't work. I got the wrong key. Click, click. hit a key, save, burn firmware, done. Like you're moving on. The more steps that are involved in that process and the harder it is to do, the harder everything's going to wind up being. So that was Xmouse. Highly recommend it. It's X-Mouse, and you'll find it pretty easily. Very cool free software, very powerful. Let's see. Yes, definitely DACTYL. Armrest swivel, so they can swing away when you get closer. That's great. Nice rubber buttons on the bottom of my keyboard, works well. Yeah, great. That motion, and that is kind of a. I mean, you can work without it, but that's one of those things that gets you from 95% to 96%. Like it's a bell curve. The little things will get you so much more productivity. But once you hit kind of a wall where it takes a lot to get that extra 97%, 98%, where you're not thinking about the keyboard anymore. It's just, it flows. All it is, it's like a direct link from here to there. And that's where you want to be, because the faster you type, the faster you get work done, the more work you get done, you know, the more time you have for life that isn't involved in work. Cool. So looking into that, minimum buy in is $99 on Amazon. Yeah. Yeah, $99. And if you're using it to get work done, cost is, it depends on cost. I've gotten so much work done comfortably with this standing desk, and it took me a long time to really make the decision, like, okay, I'm gonna go for the standing desk thing. I'm gonna go all in on it. But this is like a $300 desk, and that was a good deal. And it's, I don't know, I'm cheap. I've said it before. I'm cheap. But the amount of work that I've gotten done here, and honestly, there's something about this freedom of motion where you're moving around while you're standing, and you can see it on my live coding streams where I'm just like, I don't know. There's something about the whole body motion that, like, it inspires a creativity. You're not sedentary while you're just grinding away at something. It's it helps. It helps. I don't know quite why it helps, but it does help. Linux or Windows? Linux for days. I use Windows on this box just to kind of get things started, but all of my work is done on a Linux box. I think I talked a little bit about this earlier. Battery life on I fight with battery life on laptops. If you've got a tower PC or something, load it with Linux. I mean, it's so bloody easy nowadays to get into Linux and to learn Linux and to start exploring how Linux works. But the benefit is really that you can make your own. If you're a programmer, you get access to all these tools for free, basically. And Linux is built for programmers, by programmers. I mean, it's for people who do work. Technical work, I should say. Graphical work, not as much. CAD work is there, but not as much. Most of those commercial level products enterprise level products are made for Windows or optimized in Windows. You can get away with a lot of stuff in Linux, and it's getting so much stronger now. It's great. OpenOffice used to be a joke. Now it's brilliant. It's great. Inkscape is cross-platform. That works really well. Bit of a resource hog. I've said that about open source software before, but it is what it is, and it works well enough. The only reason, and I think I said this on one of the streams, the only reason I kept this Windows 10 box, I was very, very against Windows, anti-Windows. I don't like all the design decisions that Windows makes. But I bought this laptop as kind of a stopgap between breaking my Surface Pro 4 by a case. Always buy a case. And I was like, well, this is a $100 laptop. I've heard good things about ThinkPads, I think. And then it had Wacom on it, so I could draw on it, which was important to me. And it came with Windows 10, and I'm like, oh, I'll blow that away immediately. And I didn't, because I was like, well, I'll blow it away, but that's like a long, drawn-out process of troubleshooting and figuring stuff out. Although with Ubuntu's driver support now, it's amazing. It's very impressive. It used to be so hard. Right, so I was like, well, I got to get some work done, and that's going to be a long process, so I'll just go ahead and do something real quick. And I would work on it, just SSHing into my Linux box. And all of my work is done basically on that server in the cloud. It's a Linux box. And having access to that kind of power where it just sits and it runs and I can access it from anywhere, that alone is a good reason to learn to use Linux. Just because it's cheap and it's easy to get into. It's cheap to get and it's very powerful. It's not necessarily easy to get into, although nowadays you can learn just about anything, and there's lots of stuff available online. So definitely learn Linux, and if you have to do the I have a Windows computer over here and I have a Linux computer over here, and the Windows computer is slow as a dog, and I hate using it, but I'm going to use it to, Stack Exchange, get answers while I'm actually working on this Linux box, because you're gonna need help. And as long as you don't have an easy avenue to be like, oh, I'm done with this, I'm switching to Windows, just for the familiarity, like, it's the difficulty curve. When you get in it and when you slide in it and when you fight through it, you'll hit that point where you're like, okay, this is starting to make sense. And before you know it, you're using Linux all the time, and you're like, wow, I don't have to crash. I have very minimal patches. Everything is controlled by me, and if I want to do a really weird, odd thing with my interface, I can. Like, it's possible. It's all there. And I have full access to it, which also means I have full access to screw it up, which you probably will do at some point. Just don't rm-rf/, There's tricks. I don't think people are exchanging fork bombs anymore, but whatever. Definitely. I mean, if you're interested in any kind of IT field, in any kind of work, in actual development and managing servers and stuff, learning Linux is almost a must. Very much so. Plus, if you only know Windows right now, you should be trying to expand, always. I mean, just get into it. The only reason I don't learn Mac is because I don't have access to one, I don't care to, and there has been no point at which someone was like, hey, can you get on my Mac computer and build and do and work? And, like, I will pay you for it, then no. I mean, they do graphical work, yeah, and they do some things pretty well, and the software on there is pretty good, but I just can't. I can't get into Macs. So I know very, very, almost criminally little about Macs. Is there a 40% split build you would recommend for Teensy? No. That was my problem, unfortunately. Teensys don't support it. So what you would wind up doing is building a plate. Oh, there it goes. Building a plate that would just do nothing but house switches, and then after you build that split plate, you put all your switches in, you would hand wire it like so, and then those wires, rather than those wires coming back to one Teensy, you would wire them back to the Teensy using the ribbon cable. So then each connection would come back. That's your Teensy. Would come back to your microprocessor. That's the only way to do splits with a Teensy right now. But if you're a bit of a programmer, or if you're comfortable programming, or if you've got a good environment that you can work in, that's like pretty much going to be the only environment you work in, and you'll always have access to be like, hey, really quick, let me switch this up, change that, and burn the firmware, and then run it, and then you're back. As long as you can reduce the iteration time of, I'm going to tweak this, now I'm going to tweak that, now I'm going to change this, then it's okay. But if you wind up, you go to work and it doesn't have all the stuff you need, and you don't have the USB drivers installed, and you don't have access to install stuff, and you have to go to IT and be like, hey, could you install it on this computer so I can run my really weird keyboard and reprogram it? They'll be like, oh, denied. And that slows down that process. But I mean, honestly, I'm really impressed with the hardware that's out there today. I really, really like the Iris if you can get your hands on one. My understanding was they just did another run, and now they're already out of them. I got to go soon. But I think there's a lot that can be covered in the QMK. It's harder to work with, like I said. You don't get the advantages of the Teensy, but if you can work with it, I think it's worth it. If you're honest with yourself and you're like, dude, I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to be able to figure it out, I'm sorry, then that's okay too. If you don't really plan on modifying the layout much, and I always recommend modifying your tools to match your workflow, but a lot of people don't, and they're okay with whatever it's got preloaded on it, then you can buy one, a Let's Split build, or even an Iris build that's already been assembled and already been programmed with the standard firmware, and you can just learn that firmware. There are options, but not for a Teensy. It's just that hardware option. And it's not bad, it's just time consuming. And then the limitation is you have a split that has a cable permanently attached to it. And if that's okay with you, that's fine. It's not removable. You have a limit to how wide it can go. I think that's about it. Otherwise, you would get all the features. And hand wiring is not that hard. I've got a video on it. I say that, but I've spent many hours, dozens of hours hand wiring. So practice makes perfect. I could build something like that. My time is a bit expensive at this point, though. So, Tobias Black Table is a good Lightroom replacement for Linux or Mac. 100% Linux. Yeah, Arch, one of those Arch folks. Windows is in a VM where it belongs. Yeah, that is where it belongs. Honestly, I've been very impressed with Windows 10, which is a total weird thing to say. A very weird thing to say, but I have been very impressed with it. I'm not on upgraded hardware. It's a straight install. I hear a lot of bad things about upgraded hardware. Something that went from Windows 7 or Windows 8 to Windows 10. But I don't know. I don't have bad things to say about it. Philosophically, I could probably say more bad things about Ubuntu. But try it out. It's whatever works. Linus Torvalds was asked what distro he uses, and I was like, that's a dumb question. And he was like, that's a dumb question. He didn't say that's a dumb question, but he was like, my job is not to get into distro wars. My job is to turn on the computer and open my development environment and work on the kernel. Like, that's his job. What he cares about is not, well, is it truly free? Would Richard Stallman anoint this distro? He just wants it to work. He wants to be able to turn it on and start working as quickly as possible, and that's what I care about at this point. So the rest is just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic, unless it crashes, unless it kicks you out, unless you get forced automatic updates that shut down your computer when it's inconvenient. That's when it starts getting into your work, and that's when you start getting mad. And I haven't really had that with Windows 10. So as weird as it is to say, I don't have a negative word to say about it. So I gotta get out of here, get ready, get to work. It was very good talking to you Linus goes Windows 3.1. I started on Windows 3.11, man. That was good. Good stuff on a Packard Bell. Whew. All right, guys. Very good talking to you all. I hope to be starting these a little bit more regularly, but we'll see. Good talking to you.